We're joined now by Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas. Senator, thanks for being with us.
Hey, John, how are you?
Great. Senator, there's a couple of things I want to ask you about. The first is the Russia story, which has gone on and on and on. And I've been surprised that a number of conservatives have jumped ship on President Trump over this meeting that Donald Trump Jr. had with some people from Russia who we thought had information about Hillary Clinton and some nefarious dealings she may have had with Russia. It turned out they didn't have any information at all. Doesn't seem like a big deal to me, but a number of conservatives have been writing that they think that the Democrats have finally got the evidence of collusion between Trump and Russia that they've been looking for. What do you make of this?
No, John, I think that would be jumping to conclusions. As Donald Trump Jr. has said, he ought to approach the matter differently, and I certainly believe that he and his advisors ought to have fully disclosed all the facts they had at hand last week when this first came to public attention. All that said, these matters are within the scope of what Director Mueller is doing as a special counsel and what we're doing on the Senate Intelligence Committee. And before people jump to conclusions on that, we should simply let those reviews take their course. Moreover, I would say if you look at the objective facts, you'll see that the Trump administration has taken a much firmer line on Russia than did the Obama administration. So I think that Democrats who are jumping to those conclusions and some Republicans ought to just wait and let all the facts come to light before they reach such a conclusion.
Senator, I think you made the most important point, which is what's the point of all this? The Democrats' theory was that the Russians had something on President Trump, or for some reason he was very friendly to the Russians, and therefore he was going to do them favors as president. Well, of course, he's done no such thing. He's been much tougher on the Russians. But here's the other point that I think gets lost in the shuffle, and that is that the Democrats are really misusing, I think, the word collusion. If you look at the dictionary, this is the Merriam-Webster dictionary, collusion means secret agreement or cooperation, especially for an illegal or deceitful purpose, such as acting in collusion with the enemy. And the point I come back to, Senator, is that there's nothing wrong with somebody who's part of the Trump campaign, in this case Donald Trump Jr., meeting with some people from Russia who say we've got information about illicit dealings between Hillary Clinton and Russia when she was Secretary of State. That's not bad. There's nothing unlawful or deceitful or anything else. That's good if information like that came to light. Isn't that right?
Well, John, as you say, that's the dictionary definition of collusion, and there's been no public evidence of any such collusion. And in fact, there are good reasons why a foreign intelligence service like Russia, which, believe me, meddles in other countries' political affairs all the time, would be very reluctant to do so with a national of that country because it is such a sensitive matter. But this is why I say we should simply let the Intelligence Committee and let Director Mueller run the course of our reviews and get all the facts out before anyone jumps to any conclusions.
Senator, you, of course, are a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee, so you actually know exactly what's going on there. What can you tell us? Is there going to be some conclusion to this investigation in the foreseeable future, or what should we expect?
No, I expect so, John. We are moving very quickly on numerous fronts, conducting lots of interviews. We have a very busy hearing schedule just this week alone. I hope that we'll wrap up sometime in this calendar year, and sooner rather than later. Our progress has been quite rapid, and I think the pace is increasing.
All right. Well, we will see what kind of a report the Intelligence Committee ultimately comes out with. The second thing I wanted to ask you about, Senator, is the big news of the day, which is that the attempt in the Senate to repeal and replace Obamacare has collapsed, at least for now. There's talk about a straight Obamacare repeal perhaps being voted on. Where do you see this going at this point?
Obamacare is still inflicting a lot of pain on Arkansans and on Americans all across the country. So we can't simply walk away from health care reform because Americans elected Republicans to Congress and Donald Trump to the White House in no small part to make our health care system better. So I'm disappointed that we couldn't even start debate on the legislation and start the amendment process But I support Senator McConnell's proposal that we move forward with another vote on the bill that 49 Republican senators voted for in December of 2015, which would simply defund all of Obamacare over a 2-year timeline and allow us a little more time to try to reach consensus on a future health care reform and maybe get some Democratic support as well. Again, 49 senators voted for that in December of 2015. John Kennedy and Luther Strange, the two new senators, I'm pretty certain will vote for it as well. There's your 51 votes. Now, going forward with repeal only on a delayed timeline to replace in the future is maybe not the preferred method, maybe not where we want it to be here in mid-July, but I think that at this point may be the most practical outcome.
I want to explore that a little bit because I'm not sure exactly what that legislation would entail. You said that it's a defunding Obamacare on a 2-year timeline. So does it just put the issue off for 2 years, or do we progressively get rid of Obamacare over that time period?
It puts it off for 2 years, John. So this very bill was voted out of the Senate and the House and vetoed by President Obama in December of 2015. My understanding is that Senator McConnell plans to simply reintroduce that bill as an amendment, and I would imagine that the 49 Republican senators who voted for that bill a mere 18 months ago would vote for it again, and that Luther Strange and John Kennedy, the two new Republican senators, would vote for it as well. I can't imagine why someone in those 49 senators would flip-flop after just 18 months. They might argue that circumstances have changed. The only circumstance that's changed that I can see, though, is that Donald Trump is now the president, and he's willing to sign it. And surely no Republican senator voted for the bill to repeal Obamacare in 2015, certain in the knowledge that it wouldn't pass, and would now flip-flop because it would pass.
Well, you know your colleagues better than we do, Senator. Do you think there are any Republicans in that category?
We'll see soon enough, John. If someone voted for this bill in December 2015 and now wants to vote against it 18 months later, I think they would have a lot of explaining to do to their voters back home, and frankly, a lot of explaining to their colleagues in the Senate.
I couldn't agree more. But again, just so we're clear on this, if that bill were to pass, would Obamacare continue on for 2 years exactly as it is now, and then automatically go out of existence in 2 years? Is that the idea?
Well, so the one wrinkle, John, to keep in mind is that we passed that bill in December of 2015 under the same budgetary rules that are tying our hands a little bit right now. So it doesn't repeal every single regulation, for instance, that has no budgetary impact under Senate budget rules, but it does repeal and defund every part of Obamacare, including some of the most unpopular parts that do have that budgetary impact. So, for instance, the hated individual mandate that forces Americans to buy an insurance product they don't want and can't afford, the tax fines that go with your failures to comply with the Obamacare mandates, and so on and so forth. But those would become effective 2 years from now. That would give us time to craft a replacement plan that can get a majority of senators. And it would also give us time to have a campaign where the Democrats and the Republicans can say Obamacare is ending next year. We want your trust and confidence at the ballot box to craft the alternative. Let's have a vote. That's the way we do it in America.
All right. So it sounds like that's probably the best path forward at this point. The other thing I wanted to ask you about, Senator, is the rest of the Republican agenda, much of which at least has been stalled, waiting for action on Obamacare. And I'm thinking especially about tax reform. What are the prospects to do something serious on taxes here in the near future?
John, I'm hopeful that we can cut taxes for working families in Arkansas and all across the country and help businesses grow a little faster, hire more, pay some better wages. I expect that when we're done in the next 4 weeks, we're going to spend a shortened time at home with our voters in August and get back right after Labor Day, that we'll turn our attention to tax right then. Part of the problem we've had is unprecedented obstruction from the Democrats in the Senate on President Trump's nominees. And I'm not talking about high-profile cabinet members. I'm talking about nominees that are 2 or 3 levels down from the cabinet. These are the kind of nominees that would have been passed by voice vote in every previous administration, and now we're having to have numerous procedural votes and spend 30 hours each on every nomination, even when there's no Democrat to debate them. They're simply trying to grind out the clock. That's why I think that, we either have to force them to reach or get an agreement with them or force them to stand down through 24-hour sessions and weekend sessions as well until they start acting more reasonably, so we have more time in the Senate floor to consider the very important bills that the American people sent us here to vote on.
As you may know, Senator, I've written about this on Powerline. It's a scandal what the Democrats are doing. They are drawing out the appointment process. Only about 20% of President Trump's nominees have actually been voted on by the Senate. And at the rate they're going, they would all be voted on in the next 4 years. They literally will run out the clock. And in the meantime, they're tying up the Senate with these silly procedures so that it's difficult for you folks to consider substantive legislation. And if need be, are the Republicans willing to just change the rules to bring this to a stop?
John, it really is unprecedented. Again, some of the nominees on which we're voting are passing by a unanimous vote. Yet the Democrats are requiring us to have a recorded vote and spend 2 full days on the nomination, even though they're not even debating it. We don't even have to go so far as you suggest, John, which is to change the rules. We could simply enforce the rules as they're written, not as the kind of easy, languid culture and habits of the Senate have built up in recent years. So, for instance, if the Democrats want to have a debate on these nominees, they have to be on the floor and they have to be debating. And the first moment they're not, then the presiding officer of the Senate can simply move the question and have a vote. That's permitted within the rules as written. I would suggest we get back to that until the Democrats relent and start behaving more reasonably.
Well, that sounds like a great idea. The procedures in the Senate assume good faith. The Senate has always been kind of a collegial body. Now, obviously, in the 1850s, we had some departure from that, but it has historically been a more cooperative body, and its practices and its rules assume that people are operating in good faith in what they believe to be the interests of the country. And I think we're just not seeing that kind of good faith from the Democrats these days, and the Republicans have got to respond to that.
John, we can't just sit here like chumps and let the Democrats violate the spirit of the rules and, as you say, the good faith that is required to make the Senate function. Look, the Senate is designed in part to give each state an equal voice in the policymaking process. That's good when you're from a smaller state like Arkansas. It's even good when you're from a bigger state like Minnesota, because we still have a voice that's equal to places like California and Texas and Florida and New York. So I've been one of the very few, sometimes just one senator, who blocked legislation because it would be hurtful to my state. But I do so in a spirit of good faith and negotiation, and I've since, when that happens, I try to negotiate with the bill sponsors and get changes, and we've achieved that. What we can't have is 48 senators just creating a complete blockade of nominees, which, again, are non-controversial. 2 or 3 levels down from cabinet members getting voted on unanimously after 2 full days of, lack of activity on the Senate floor.
The last question I want to ask you, Senator, is about tax reform. We touched on this just very briefly, and I want to come back to it. I think it's vitally important that the Republicans do something serious on taxes. Repatriation, I've always said, is the lowest hanging fruit. But I worry anytime I hear the word comprehensive. And do you think there's a danger that the Republicans won't get anything done on tax reform because they're trying to do everything, via a comprehensive tax package?
There's a real danger, John. That's why in tax reform, as in most cases in life, more is better than less, but something's better than nothing. You're right that some folks in Washington, want to chase the great white whale of a complete and comprehensive rewrite of our tax code. Not saying that that wouldn't be smart. Tax code is pretty old now, written in very different circumstances. However, we can't aim at that great white whale and do nothing short of it. So as you cite, repatriation is one example. A lot of American companies' money is sitting overseas. Those companies would love to bring it back here and invest it here in new jobs, new factories. They can't do so right now. I'd like that to be part of a bigger tax package, but if it can't get the bigger package, something is better than nothing.
And something that shows the American people results prior to the fall of 2018. And repatriation, again, a great example of something where we'd feel the consequences, and I think it would have a huge impact on the next election cycle.
That's right, John. And that's ultimately how we're going to be judged. Are folks feeling a little bit better about their quality of life? They have a little bit more money in their pocketbooks, feel a little more secure on their streets. That's what Americans are looking for. And that's the way every 2 years Americans vote, is on those basic kitchen table issues.
Senator Tom Cotton, thank you so much for being with us on the Laura Ingraham Show. We're going to run to a break, and we'll come back with your calls at 855-40-LAURA.
The Laura Ingraham Show.